know what kind of information they convey to the entire judiciary. So that's very important that they make a political party. Then political party is just one thing, and under the leadership of their political party, they actually carry out further plans and also some other steps. In 1912, the party under the leadership of all judicial revolution code, that's Feng Zhongxian's word, which largely can be seen in their judicial reform talks and plans. Particularly, for the first time in Chinese history, as Wang Chonghui emphasized, human rights protection as his political agenda in his inaugural address. It's human rights first written into official government document. That's the year of 1912. That's the year. Then their judicial reform plan proposed in Xu, but they actually proposed a very ambitious judicial plan. Now that judicial plan actually, when Feng Zhongxian referred to the judiciaries as making the judicial revolution, he actually pointing to that judicial plan. So, just simply put, the judicial plan, as I showed you that through the entire Republic of China history, you already saw that it very meager, it's kind of mirroring slow development of judicial reform, right? Now you think about the judicial plan, how radical is that, or how ambitious and earnest they want to push out the judicial reform, how that kind of a mentality the judiciary in that year, in the year of 1912, really helped. In that plan, they hope to set up 2,000 courts within 5 years. That means 400 courts a year. As you already knew, that up to the year 1936, China still does not have a court of 400. So that's something that kind of really reflects that those kind of radical ideology that share among the judiciaries, and also their ambitions there. And then you can think further about that problem, that behind their radical ideology, what really supports their ideology, they really share that. Those kind of things. We can discuss them, but then you can further see the second part is to have the hope to within 5 years they have 40,000 judges in China by the year of 1917. That means that annually, then for every year in China, you have to have produced 8,000 judges, so you can fulfill your plan, right? But as you already know, that through the history of the Republic of China, we only have formal judges that are only less than 4,000. That gives us problems, right? They give us the hopes, but they also give the problems, right? But those kind of ambitions does not really give the judiciary itself a problem. It gives the suspicious executive power huge chance to fight back, to really react to the judiciary ambitions. That's why the judicial reform in China, they really have one good year. That's 1912. But in the year of 1912, they have such kind of ideological upheaval there. Then you also see because of the ambitions. Also, I have to emphasize that in the year of 1912 or before, in China, we actually have that kind of judicial activism among the first generation judges. A sense of judicial activism was shared among themselves. At the time, they believed that judicial independence is the top priority on the new republic's political agenda. In Chinese 司法立国司法独立为民国开幕第一要证。Actually, that's true, because the treaty requires so. The treaty requires so. First of all, you have a modern judicial system. You can have a modern state. That's the treaty's logic there. So, but okay. They assume that other government branches will respect this as well and will respond if there's law. In other words, the judges and their partisan politics will render a powerful self-image on the state of the newborn republic. However, the public image of the court and judges, however, are not well received by the executive power. Moreover, they only give the suspicious executive power authoritative information that the court is dangerous. Right? As I remember that when the first, like the founding fathers in the United States, is it Madison? He says something like the judiciary is the least dangerous branch. But here in China, that's a quote from Yuan Shikai's work. We actually believe that court is really dangerous. Okay, that's why we see in historical archives the reaction from government executive is first as watch and see. That's in the year 1912. Then they take actions to cut down financial support. Then reduce numbers of court, remove all county level courts. Then essentially close the court. And this all happened in 2 years immediately following the judicial revolution. That's the year of 1913 to 1914. And that's the power struggle. The three factors that changed the course of judicial development. First, that in September in 1913, Xu Xiying was forced to step down. And Yang Qichao took over with his emphasis on judicial restraint. This turnover of judicial power marks the beginning of change in ideology of the judiciary. The second, the political meeting which started in the year in late 1913. A political meeting came in at the capital city. This meeting started targeting the judiciary as the number one evildoer. That should be responsible for hopeless political development at that time. Actually, among society, they have a scene by the time of 1913. They called judges, soldiers, and business person as the three poisons to the China. They actually said that once. Then the third factor is that in addition that the judicial budget as a whole was regarded as an economy. They think that this caused something like that. They just think, they believe that judicial finance is an economy. That means that gives very negative impacts on judicial development. That's just three factors. Something like those three factors really goes on and really got rooted into the political and economic and social development in China after the year of 1912. And after years of those factors being playing their role, then let's move on directly. Then I'm closing the passage, just one part of the story. On November 1921, all Peking judges and prosecutors and their law clerk and other court staff, on the same day, they requested for leave from their jobs. That's strike. The strike really happened. But I'm not sure. 请假 is leave. Yeah, that's the strike. And you should also pay attention to is that both levels, local and higher levels of the court, And they include not just judges, they also include prosecutors. That's something really need us to really understand that. And also something you need also to pay attention to is that Peking judges, during that time they call Beijing as Peking. Peking judges actually receive much better salaries than any other judges outside Beijing. But they, first of all, before any other judges in any other regions, they first went on strike. That's very destructive for the judicial process. That's my source why I kind of have those kind of information about the strike. That's all, mostly from this guy's diary. He's very important. He was a very important judicial official in the Republic of China. So I actually found his diary. And according to his diary, actually this strike is not. I went to strike. That's it. Then someday, they received their salary, and they went back to work. It's actually has been on and back on, has been from the start to the end of the strike. It's almost 3 months past. Actually, those strike has 3 months. How about you? Yeah, sorry. You have to imagine those 3 months. The significance, in terms of time, those 3 months matter so much for the judicial process, right? That's the capital city judges and the capital city prosecutors. They went on strike. So what can you imagine? What will happen next following that? But that strikes have kind of significant implications that officially or formally announced that the end of judicial revolution, and also announced that the end of judicial and the era of judicial activism. That activism was embodied by judiciary's political party and also their ambitious plan and other steps, things like that. But that strike is alone. That's okay. Then there's another factor that join in. That China and foreign powers they signed another treaty, and in that treaty, that in the year actually that treaty was signed on Washington Conference. That conference started from the late of 1921 and then closed at spring of 1922. And in that treaty, for the first time, after almost 20 years, 1902 is the first treaty signed between China and Great Britain. In that treaty, that required China to actually carry out judicial reform, and they believe that judicial reform is the prerequisite for China to be really a modern state. But now, in this treaty, they actually does not mention judiciary at all. They mention China, the integrity. The integrity of China, the emphasis the integrity of China is the first and foremost thing for the treaty. They actually they took place of the 司法立国, state building through judiciary ideology, and they gives they really changed the momentum for the judiciary, for the judicial reform to carry on. Because in China, actually our first and foremost momentum for judicial reform, that's the treaties. And in China, by that time, people believe in the force of treaties. you add that, you keep that in there, then people believe the power of the treaties. And that gives very negative impact on the judicial process. And that's just one thing. Then another part of fact is you look at the history, you will notice that by the time the Chinese judges went on strike, and they also lose the momentum for the treaties. And we have the China government during that time. Actually, in the following years, you have China in anarchy. You have the government really powerless. You have the government really lacking this financial capability. Then taking into all these considerations, you can imagine the judicial reform, the difficulties the judiciary really focus on, really encounter. Then, in the year of 1926, we have another judicial strike. This time, it happens not from the judges per se, but it happens from the civil for their first strike, because that's from the Ministry of the Justice. Both their strikes, their excuses are exactly the same thing. They cannot receive salaries timely. They just cannot receive salaries timely. It's not just a month's salary not paid timely. It's long time or more than a couple of months or years of salary they cannot receive timely. That's kind of a situation that really impacts, affects the judicial process. Then, in the same year, you'll see the change. Because also I have to remind you that one fact. By the year of the second judicial strike really occurred in that year in China, in terms of the entire China, we only have 996 judicial officials. By saying judicial officials, that includes both judges and prosecutors. That's in China. We have almost 500 million population. We have less than 1,000 judicial officials. What happened? What happened with the judicial process? So that's kind of difficulty or dilemma or kind of difficulty problem for the judicial problem. Then in the same year, we'll see the change. The change is not in a better or bad way, but it's really in a changing toward current way. From that year on, you'll see an image of a judge who really look like what the judge look like now. That's over-politicization of the judiciary in China. That's the process. In the year, then in the process of politicization. In 1928, in 1926, Xu Tian, you notice that Xu Tian called for Judge to join in Kuomintang Party. He called the judge. Then in the year of 1928, in his capacity as the president of Judicial Union, Wang Chonghui reiterated the policy for judge to join in the Kuomintang Party. That's why the 司法党化 really happened. That's from the. I have to remind you, those two guys, those two judicial persons, they are the two major persons who played the most important role to formulate the judicial party in the year of 1912. And in the year of 1926 and 1929 and 1928, it's done again. They institutionalize the weak judiciary image into China. And by also in the year by early 1930s, you will see something like interesting about the Supreme Court. And because the Supreme Court, I happened to come across this archive because the Supreme Court by that time, they really praised that the Supreme Court actually became a local party headquarters by the time, by the early 1930s. That's over-politicization. Then, from 1930s from now, you'll have generally there are similar image about judges in China. That's the process. There's some afterthoughts. Just because we have actually this my topic is mainly about judiciary and about the judicial theories. Actually, we've received many, maybe more than many theories about the judicial power. Like we hope the judicial power, like basically now we hope the judicial power to be the court to be a strong court, really have as much power as possible. Like they can have judicial review power. Even we can constitutionalize the court decisions, like just like you and like EU does now. Like we really hope that the court to be very strong, or maybe the strongest. Like then we also have a very bottom line. Our expectation for the court, at least if the court can function, at least the court can have steady judicial branch and they can give adjudications regularly, and they have smooth process and things like that. That's the bottom line. But you take into consideration Republican judges and their court. You imagine, can they really can China or put another way, like what problems did the judiciary have in that period? And then you all understand why that kind of over-politicization process happened. So then also we have to think about judicial review, judicial values, effectiveness about the judicial system. Also, we hope that court to be consequential court, right? But then our question is, because since we now seriously we ignore the political agency or the agency of the courts or the judges in contemporary China, then my question is, can the courts in China become value-oriented, effective, and consequential courts? My answer is yes. For China, this is not difficult because the first generation just already proved so. They are not just corrupted and judges lacking of political agency. They are actually in profession that really should have carried on political agency to really playing significant role in state building. So then that's the kind of first generation Chinese judges hierarchies. They actually in the first generation judges has a kind of different type of political citation. Even though they are very weak, they can carry out judicial revolution. How come contemporary China having almost 200,000 judges cannot do anything about contribute anything about the future of rule of law and carrying on the judicial reform in China? I really have a very positive view about our judiciary. Thank you so much.
Okay, questions? Please.
So would a similar type of judicial revolution, you seem to be positive about the potential outlook for it, how conceivable is that in today's China, and how would it be perceived on the ground level sort of by the everyday person who may already sort of distrust or fear the court?
Yes, that's a huge problem for us now. But my point is that because we already have that kind of mental image from the grassroots, from the community, from the society, we have inactive, very bad inactive, something like a really misleading image about the judges. But it's time for us, like especially scholars, to pick up the tradition and to tell people like the judicial reforms can be really relied on, like to be really significant and to be really consequential. That's my point. But of course, I cannot expect how long I can estimate the time. I'm really positive for that.
I'm sort of following up on that question. You seem to be very positive about the idea of this, but when you take into account the relatively short time period that the first generation judges, actually had some type of effect on China, and the unprecedented nature of what they were doing, how do you see that playing out nowadays? Because you also have the reality of the executive sort of, preventing any type of infringement upon their power. So how do you see that reacting, and how do you see any potential activism sort of playing out when you take into account the other branches of the government?
Actually, before I'm making... Oh, sorry. Sorry, excuse me. Before I'm preparing actually prepare for that question. Because
it was all part of the performance.
Because actually, that's a good question. Because in China, because when I refer to the first generation judges, if I take a broader scope of that, I include broader period of time. That's only from 1902 to 1921. I call that 20 years as the first generation. Actually, that first generation, my point is, even though at that time, like China in chaos, China, the judges can really play that kind of agency, and they can really make a strong judiciary image, and they have the kind of ambition put into policies. That's very important for us, because now in China, the judges and the common people's expectation on the judges, they do not have that kind of expectation on those judges, on the judges now. Now, the change for us to really expect is we can have an expectation of judges. It's not for the solution. Now it's time for us to change. We really change our image, our trust, confidence on the judiciary. Because now you'll see the numbers, data about the judges. As I said, like now the 200,000. There are 50,000 females, and they all got formal education from law school. At least from us, because we are law faculty members. If we don't trust them, who can trust them? If we can trust them, we can work on the discourse on literature. We really can change that kind of image of the judges. If you understand, because I assume every one of you have classmates who really join in the judiciary. They act as judges, all prosecutors. Are they all bad? Are they all lacking those kind of ambitions or their kind of belief in judicial independence? Deep in their heart, they have those kind of image, those perception, conception. The thing is the political situation, but once the political situation changes, the judiciary should be prepared. And also the common people should be prepared. And that's my concern.
Thank you very much for this wonderful presentation. Very informative. I have two questions about a smaller one. A smaller question is that, do you have more information on why the judges did not receive their payment in tiny bit anxious.
Sure.
Because the reason why I asked that question is because of course, I'm not a legal historian, but I do know that during that period of time, the central government was pretty weak.
Yeah.
And I think I've heard the story that the president at that time was keeping a small farm in his residency, so that the office would be subsidized by the income made from that farm. So it was a very awkward position. So is it because the reason why we were not paid in the time we had is because the central government just didn't have money?
Yeah.
Or is it because they just didn't want to pay the judge? Because I see that's a big difference. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's my smaller question. My bigger question is about the causation, because you seem to structure your argument in the sense that the judges, if I understand you correctly, the judges actually voluntarily, maybe not voluntarily, but actively give up on their judicial revolution or their ideology, which caused the difficult position, the weakening of judicial power, which has until today. Well, my question is that is it the other way around? Is it possible that the judges did not actively give up their power or their ideology, but rather forced to do so because of the political pandemics or because of other stuff? Because as I see it, if we talk about judicial reform and judicial activism, largely relates to how people in this country think, what the image of the court is, what the position of the court in people's minds. In this country, for example, if essentially, majority of the senators, the congressmen, the lawyers, everybody really respect the rule of law. They respect judges. They trust the judges. So it's kind of a social, a cultural trust put in the judges. So that gives authority to judges. But in a country like China, as I said, just even if people don't trust judges, they don't think that's a noble profession, or they don't give judges a lot of authority. Even if the judges themselves are holding really strong positions, like you just described, they want judicial revolution. Probably it didn't work out, and maybe they realized that that will never work out, so they give up. If that's true, then that's important, because today we may have the same situation even today. So if they failed 100 years ago, why can they succeed today?